All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Joe Rockey. Joe, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show, man.
Thank you, man. I'm super excited to do this. It's going to be great.
I am too. I am too. And I want to start. I got to give a shout out to the folks over at the Quoted platform. I guess it's probably been about a month ago now. I was talking with another friend of mine who he too hosts a podcast, and he was telling me, he's like, Kevin, I get some amazing guests from the Quoted platform, and I had never even heard about them. And so I checked it out, and my assistant was like, "Well, why don't we just put up a listing really quick?" And so she did, and within 48 hours, 2 days, I had 41 responses, and most of them were awesome. Seven of them weren't a right fit. We just politely declined, but you were one of those, Joe. And I will tell you, I'm about
I
three.
was the awesome one, the declined one.
No, you didn't get declined. You wouldn't be here if you got declined.
Oh, I'd like to check.
And it has been an absolutely amazing experience. And so, I don't know that anybody on this platform is going to, from that platform, is going to see this interview, but I'll tell you what, I'm pretty stoked about finding out about that platform, and I'll definitely be using it more. And so, yeah, I'm totally stoked to have a conversation with you today. We got to connect before and get to know each other, I've been looking forward to this interview. And so, what I want to do is I just want to start. I want to turn it over to you, Joe, so we can set some context here. I want to let you be able to talk about, what you guys do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you guys do and the impact you're making, and also give us some of the backstory as well, because every entrepreneur has an amazing backstory, and you do too, Joe. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a broad starting point. I am a serial entrepreneur, for lack of a better way of putting it. I've created 29 different entities in my life. And part of which is because I was able to do something that most businesses say they want to do, but never really do the work to figure out how to do it, which is how to make the business run without you. Of my 29 businesses, all except for 4 are completely absentee ownered, or I sold them. Which, by the way, it is so much easier to sell a business that you are an absentee owner of than one that you're engaged with. In fact, it's actually pretty much a requirement if you want to do it right. So that's the starting point. And as a good litmus test for any business that you're doing, if you want to know if it's going to work, I mean, just that in the broadest sense, it's 2 questions. If you want to know your business is going to be successful, I don't care what industry you're in, what it does, it comes down to 2 questions. That's it. What is the relationship the business has between itself and the employee and the employees? That's question 1. What is the relationship between the business and the employees? Which for small businesses, that is different than the relationship between the owner and the employees. It's what is the relationship between the business and the employees? And the second question is, what is the relationship between the business and the prospects / clients? If either one of those questions answers is basically, it's okay, but your business is going to die. It's just a matter of when. Because if you do not have an above average to stellar to elite answer to both of those questions, your business has a speed break on it that you haven't taken off. So really what drives me is solving those 2 major problems. How to make the relationship with the employees better, and how to make the relationship with the prospects and clients better. And that's what really drives it to all me. I mean, you guys obviously are watching this. You can see my sales book over my shoulder here. That's pretty direct about how to do it with both sides of it, because I talk about it both from the perspective of how to do sales and how to manage salespeople. So that's kind of a very quick and high level overview of what I'm all about. As far as what got me here was when I first entered the workforce in terms of an actual job that the government took a cut of, I was 16 and I was in sales. And every job along the way, I've been in sales. And the reason was I got completely addicted to the commission-only lifestyle. The fact that when I produce I made more than all of my peers working their minimum wage job at McDonald's and Wendy's and Target and all those other places. Pretty much I had more fun. I didn't really know what I was doing when I was that young selling, but I had the experience of getting a sale, getting a big pile of money, seeing it made more than everyone else, and then also the experience of wasting it all and then being like, when's the next check coming? Which is the ups and the downs of the commission only
Yeah.
lifestyle, because it's great when it's in, but that valley can be very scary and stressful. And normally that scary stress is what people leave sales for. That's why they don't start their business. They want to know they're going to have a secure check. They want to know that things are going to be taken care of. You don't get that being the guy who's the commission only guy, which every business owner is. So that's starting prerequisite to want to build a business. I already had that bug. And then when I came out of college, it was during the last recession. And I had a degree in accounting and finance. And if you think back to the last recession, who was getting blamed? All the banks for giving out the
That's right.
subprime loans to everyone.
Yep.
And accounting firms were falling left and right, mostly as a fallout of Enron, which was at the exact same time. Enron lied on their books and they brought down a major accounting house, and they were getting really uptight nationwide.
Yep.
So I
And Bernie
have this.
Madoff got busted during that time because of all that too.
All of it. So you add that all up, accountants and finance people aren't exactly the happiest group in the world. In fact, the entire financial industry as a whole had a lot of clouds over it.
Yeah.
But I had the thing that every business needed. Every business needs to know where its money is. That's why I chose accounting, because that's basically all accounting is. Where's my money at? I need to know where that is. And then there's two ways in which a business can get more money: through either loans and equity funding events, that's finance, or through sales. That's the preferred one. And I had all my experience of working there. So I took that, combined it, started into working at selling life insurance and annuities. And I was good. I was very good at it. First year, I was rookie of the year. Second year, I was underclassman of the year. And third year, I left. And the reason I left was, quite frankly, a disillusionment. The reason I chose the industry of selling life insurance and annuities was the residual. I always had this belief that I wanted to get paid when I was older for work that I did when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, the subscription model did not exist yet. It didn't. I see my camera just died on me there. Sorry about that.
It did. Nope. There, now you're back.
Now we're back. I have no idea how Zoom works sometimes, but the subscription model didn't work. It didn't exist yet. Netflix wasn't here. The only thing you paid regularly was your taxes, your mortgage, and that was about it. Your utilities also. So I didn't have the ability to go buy a phone company. That wasn't going to happen. But I was able to be a landlord. And that's ultimately what I chose to do it. I left the industry of insurance when I found out what the residual rate actually was when I started experiencing it. It was 0.1%, which said another way, you'd have to work 1,000 years to get 1 year's worth of income. And that wasn't the math I wanted to play with. So that led me into my first businesses, which was the real estate world, because I wanted to have the residual income, which at that time was going to be through the rentals. And then from there, it just kind of grew, splintered. I learned how to run a business, how to establish a business, how to hire, how to fire, what to look for, what to avoid in every capacity you could. And then one day I woke up and I found out I was a consultant for all kinds of different companies, found out, got exposed to a whole bunch more of industries as a result. And really, like I said, just kind of grew it from there. And here we are, where now the four businesses, as I mentioned before, that are not absentee owner, there's four of them. My consultancy firm, that's where we transform people's businesses so they too have a business that they don't have to be involved in, become an absentee owner. That's what our consultancy firm does. Over the shoulder here, you see my book, Casino Sales Master. With that is also the sales course. Over my head, it's not just my name, it's also my speaker logo. So I go around and I do tours around the country. I can't figure out how to outsource that one without me being on stage. And then the final one is my newest business, which is Elite Business Cruises. And that's where we host business events on cruises that are tax deductible. They are the perfect incentive for your employees to jump through the roof, to do whatever production action you want them to do. They also create amazing retention and attraction. And it's something that, as a total country, we've been just getting worse and worse in terms of how are we making our employees special and actually care about them?
Mhm.
And having a giant standout about that is the answer. So
Yeah.
that's the where we're at with my four main ones we got going right now, and a very bumpy road of getting there, and excited
Yeah.
to talk about some of the people along the way that helped it happen.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally relate to what you said about the commission lifestyle. Because, when I graduated high school, I went in the military, Army for 4 years. And then for the next 7 years, I worked as a commercial fisherman on Alaska's Bering Sea.
Oh, that's awesome.
And when you're up there working, you work hard, but you can make a whole lot of money too.
Mhm.
And those fishermen, they would make a whole lot of money over, like, say, a 2-3 month period, and they would just be totally flush, lots of cash, and then it was party time for them, you
Mhm.
know. And they would come back to that boat a few months later for the next season, pretty much penniless, because they'd spent everything that they made. And, like, we're like, okay, time to make some more money. So,
That there is something to that. I mean, now you guys were adults. I was 18 doing that. So I mean that's the other trade-off of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, but, and I'll tell you, I mean, with what you said about the recurring revenue, I mean, I don't want to just let that slide by, because that's really important. And,
Mhm.
this idea of figuring out how we can get compensated over and over for work we do, as well as, in my world, just like, I have also figured out how to be really valuable to the right people, and play a game that's worth winning, so that by being valuable to those people, it leads to a lot of impact, which impact leads to revenue. The more impact we make, the more revenue gets created. And I just
Yeah,
want to
but
be
yeah,
a guy who's part of that stuff.
yeah, gotcha.
And so, these are, like, I don't want, like, for anybody listening to this, the go to work, because when we're working, we are trading time for dollars and stuff.
Mhm.
But by being really intentional about this, it can be long-term dollars that we do work today that we get paid for years to come, kind of a thing,
Mhm. That's exactly it.
And so, yeah,
And the joy of the commission lifestyle is you don't have a cap on it. You know, if
yeah,
you're on a salary position, there's a cap. I mean, you might get a
yes,
bonus or something at the end of the year, but you're not getting infinite. Infinite is never an option.
yeah,
If you get a business machine that rolls out like crazy, infinite is an option.
that's
Obviously,
right.
it's impossible, but it's still an option to get to that crazy, impossibly high number.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now that we've got some context set here, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Joe,
Mhm.
have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your
Yeah.
experience around this topic of relationships.
So there's two of them, and they build on
Okay.
top of each other. And as I'm putting this together, it's the first time I've ever thought of it in this context. I'm not sure they've ever actually met each other. As I put this through, as I mentioned before, I came out of selling life insurance and annuities, and I was good at it. I wasn't good at it because I had any technique whatsoever. I was good at it because I just didn't stop. And even if you have a 2% conversion rate, if you just keep working and working and working, you'll end up with results at the end, even though you've burnt your entire transmission and all the tread off the tires. It will still happen. And I was 21. That's what I did. And the first answer here is going to be Dan Hudock, who owned a Sandler company. He's the first person who actually told me how to sell correctly. Now, I've been classically trained in two of the three major sales companies out there. In my opinion, the three big ones being Sandler, Dale Carnegie, and Ziegler.
Okay.
Um, and Dan, obviously being Sandler of that side of it, um, I remember sitting down with him. It was mid 20s, and I thought I was going to sell life insurance. And he basically said that I was like, "You have no idea how to sell, do you?" I was like, "I'm selling enough to have money." He goes, "No, no, you're burning yourself out enough to have money." He goes, "But you have no idea how to sell." And learning the structure, the foundation, was the essence of it. And really it was him being willing to take a chance on me. I remember telling him outright, it's like, listen, if I'm going to fail, I might as well get out of the way now. And if you know the right habits I should learn, instead of me just making stuff up along the way, if you know the right habits, why don't we just do this now? And for pretty much 5 years continuously, I learned all kinds of stuff from him. He was the reason I was able to go from just someone who was working really hard and buying properties and renovating them to being able to hone it into an actual enterprise. Dan is the one, not only just from the sales stuff that Sandler teaches, but from some of the business development stuff as well. And it was all, like I said, the core foundation, how you do a sale, how you look at structuring a meeting, how you do all of the employee engagement, how you look at who you should hire and who you should not hire.
Mm-hmm.
That was all Dan. And I apologize for everyone watching.
That's all
I don't
right.
understand how the internet works. So my camera keeps cutting out. I got to keep clicking on the zoom here. But I mean, that was Dan. And like I said, it was an incredibly great thing. And by the way, you can still hire Dan just the same way I did. He is completely active in the Sandler world. And he is as I mentioned before, I have a sales course, and the foundations of it, he taught me a great deal of it. And in a sense, I guess we are technically competing, but we're really not, because they're very complementary to each other. The second half of this is the part where I met Father Boniface Hicks.
Okay.
We do a podcast together. It's called Father and Joe. Every single conversation I've ever had with him, we've been recording now for 7 years. Again, you can get it on Apple as the primary one. It's an audio only one, so you're not going to find us on YouTube. But it's called Father and Joe, and everything about him is teaching about how to do relationships, and every episode's about that. So it starts with the relationship you have with yourself, the relationship you have with others, all underneath the umbrella of the relationship you have with God. And learning the science of relationships, the direct impact of relationships, looking at it through a completely different prism, because in the work context, in the business context, the way that people look at relationships is not in its purest form. It's just not the way it is. Because even in the way you were giving your description before about saying how you want to connect with people that are having meaningful differences and making an impact, it was still with the end goal of, hey, let's have some revenue at the end of the game. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the incentive of having more revenue. I am not trying to denigrate that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at relationships from the standpoint of just building a better relationship for everybody's sake, which you're doing. I mean, I'm not trying to say you're doing anything wrong. But when you look at it from that standpoint, it opens up the door to so many interactions that go beyond the possibility of wealth. We're talking about now about interaction with people who literally have no ability to give anything back to you. And how do you still make it successful when it's important to you? How do you get your 13-year-old daughter to start wanting to talk to you again? How do you get your estranged son to actually come to Thanksgiving? What do you do when you realize that this crazy guy in Russia just invaded another country because he felt like it? Like, how should you feel about this? Like, these kinds of questions are all relationships in a different way. And how do you go about it? And then I started diving into, which we did, was the science of the relationship. How does this actually affect with your brain and your neurochemistry and all this? And long story short, I went down this giant rabbit hole of learning about relationships that 97% of the people will never touch. They'll never do it. I mean, there's the expression that says less than 2% of the people will ever run a marathon. This is about the same department that actually will learn how your subconscious builds relationships. And I took that knowledge from Father, and I took the foundational knowledge of how to sell with Dan, and I merged them together, and then came my sales system, which is Casino Sales Master, which I called Casino Sales Master because I needed to figure out what is something that's wildly impressive to every culture, which makes you then sit back and go, what does every culture actually agree upon so something can be impressive to all of them? And it's a short list, guys. Like, it's air's important. We want our water to be clean. Casinos are built to take your money. That's the entire list. So if you can walk into a casino that's built to take from you and make those people want to see you succeed and pay you, that's a completely different world. And that world is obviously applicable within sales. That world's applicable in how you hire people, how you incentivate people, how you interact with every person in your life, because it's all relationship and sales skills. There is no gimmick. There is no, I figured out this new way of counting cards or anything like that. No, it's relationship and sales skills, which drive all of human interactions, because there's one thing that's true about every single person on earth. We are built for relationships, and it's
Yeah.
just how do you do them and how do you spend your time in learning how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I'm going to dig a little deeper into this with you. So, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with a number of examples to the question I'm going to ask you. I'm just going to challenge you to come up with one.
Okay.
So, what is an example of where you personally, excuse me, got to make a really big impact, a really substantial impact, and maybe in the moment, even maybe it even surprised you a little bit, but at the same time, that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with either one of these gentlemen that you just talked about. What's an example of something like that, Joe?
Well, I mean, the podcast kind of speaks for itself with Father. I mean, we've now filled 3 Rose Bowls. So that never would have happened had we not done this. So that one kind of speaks for itself. That's not one glaring moment, but anyone who's gone down the road of being a creator or creating podcasts, I mean, I remember the first month we had over 1,000 listeners, and that was a crazy, like, whoa, like people actually are caring about this.
Yeah, yeah,
I remember the first time we had an episode go over 100 within the first week, and that being such a crazy accomplishment, and happy about that. And remember, this was in 2017. This was before the iPhone was a thing and everyone had it in their pocket. Like, I remember all that stuff. So yeah, I mean that would be some of the stuff I'd want to point to. Since you're trying to limit me here, and I already giving you 3 instead of giving you a huge
well, that's
answer, just
totally
one
cool. I
for that.
mean, do you have more that you want to share, or
I mean, I can go all day on them if you want, but I don't want to derail your show.
no? You're all right. You're all right. But see, and that's what I love answering, or I love asking that question, because it really is like I said, it's about impact, and yes, impact leads to revenue. But it's I can tell you, for me, it's not the revenue that inspires me. Creating more revenue. My lifestyle is not going to change one dang bit. And I don't know where you're at, Joe, but I would imagine that your lifestyle probably wouldn't change any, because I'm already living in the home I want to live in. I'm already driving the vehicle that I want to drive. I get to take vacations with my family and stuff. And at this point, we have a family foundation that we started in 2008, and we do a lot of stuff through that, and we give to other stuff that we want to give to, and so as long as my home and my family is taken care of, and makes me feel I'm doing my job as a husband and a father and stuff, creating more money, it ceased to be an inspiration for me a long time ago and stuff.
Mhm.
But making a bigger impact and playing a game worth winning, and being able to be in a position to impact millions of people's lives, like you talked about, because of the podcast and stuff, that is like really exciting. And even though those people may never know that I was there or that you were there in certain things, I'm totally cool with it. I don't give a dang whether they know that I was there or not, because I know that I had a hand in that, and I'm totally good with that. And so, I really appreciate you taking the time to just have this conversation today and to share from your heart, because it is just such a testament to the power of right relationships, which of course is what this podcast is all about and stuff. And
Oh yeah.
so, for anybody listening to this, that is like, man, Kev, I really like Joe. I love his energy. And despite the fact, well, and candidly, on the podcast, we don't use the video. I mean, I use the video in other places, but so most people won't even know that your camera was popping up. But in spite of the fact that
Better
Joe's
be saying
camera
something
kept
about
popping out, I really like him and I love his energy, man. And I'd love to find out more because the thing is, you do these cruises, which is really
it.
cool. That and I want to talk just a little bit more about that because you and I got to talk about that when we talked before we did this interview, like the last conversation we had.
Mhm.
And I was just really I just love what you do with cruises because you gave me the example of like say a company that has a group of people, their team members, maybe sales people they want to acknowledge and reward or what have you, and they go through you and take them on cruises, and so talk more about what you guys do with the cruises because I want to let people know about that because they might be like, man, I want to take some of my folks on a cruise. And you know what? I might want to go myself, especially if this whole thing's going to be a write-off.
It is a write-up. We're going to start with that. So it might be easier to tell this with the backstory of it because it's such simultaneously a foreign concept yet a kind of familiar concept that I can start from the origin point of what made me build the company.
Okay.
I think we'll show it more because after I published the book, I did the same thing that every author is told to do. I went on the speaking tour. Went on people's stages, various cities, and promoted what we did essentially. And what I saw very clearly was that the companies sending their people to an event, it doesn't really even matter what the event is. This has no denigration on the other events, but whether it's in Manhattan, New Orleans, Nashville, Vegas, whatever, you lose a lot of the benefits you think intuitionally you're going to get by sending your people on an event. As soon as that thing ends, people are going to go watch Britney. They're going to go hit the strip. They're going to go to a shooting range. That's how your end of your every Vegas event has always been. Or they hit the bars. Let's ignore that. And then on top of this, as the company who sent that, now you're hoping no one does anything stupid, gets a DUI or anything. And then there's all the logistical hassles you have to deal with, getting everyone fed the whole time, all this other stuff. It's an accounting nightmare because everything's a different percentage of the write-off with the exception of the training, which is 100% write-off. So I'm sitting around because, as you mentioned before, how can I make an impact? How can I make a better business and solve this problem? It was a question of how can we first get the team building so we're building the relationships that we really are buying by sending people on an in-person event. Cool. They're literally on a cruise. There's only so much finite space. No matter how big of a boat you pick, there's only so much space. This isn't like the strip where they can disappear and have 1,500 places they go to. It's a ship, so no one's getting a DUI. It's all of the logistics are taken care of. All you have to do is make sure your people show up at the original port with a passport. End of discussion. So from that standpoint, it was like, wow, that really, really makes it a whole lot easier on the company sending people to an event. But then it solved the elephant in the room that this economy has forgotten about. The real reason why AI is taking over, like the true problem of the macro economy. And that is somewhere along the way, we as a country lost sight of the fact that maybe it's always been this way, actually, but we lost sight of the fact that the reason our employees come to work for us has nothing to do with us, the business. Mm-hmm. There's an entire personal side to their world. And in the last 20 years, especially in the last 10 years in the post-Me Too movement, companies are absolutely punting on the personal side of their employees. Absolutely not caring at all. In fact, avoiding it because there's so many social and legal pit holes in that landmine. I ain't doing it. Like, I'm not walking through that. Like, so they just quit. But when you bring the spouse on the event with you, and trust me, there is nothing like a cruise. You're getting a balcony room, all you can eat, all you can drink, great entertainment, best destinations in the world, etc. It's now, well, they care so much about not just the person who's working there, but the spouse as well. So they get to see why it's worth it, why you give your extra time, why you still think about work problems when you're at home, why sometimes you stay late, why you're willing to take on that extra closing even though you've already hit the amount of money you need for the month. Like why you work harder and do it. And I have so many examples I can go into that, but I don't want to dive into because I don't want that fact to get missed. Enveloping the entire family into your situation is what makes the situation better. I mean, look at all these other things people are craving for. I want a work-life balance. I want to be less stressed. I want all that. Well, guess what? You come home and your spouse or plus one, whoever that would be, is upset. Is upset because you have this extra friction because your work point. Intellectually, we know we have to make money, but now I'm sitting in front of my house because now I know I'm an hour and a half late. Do I really want to go into that fight? And then do I want to wake up tomorrow and do this again? It grinds people down.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily anyone's fault per se, but just by simply acknowledging it and saying, we care about you and your family, the world changes. And yes, we can do all kinds of different sales contests where we can rig it for a company that it's profitable before we even set on sale. They're going to learn amazing stuff on board and carry that business culture with you moving forward. We have transformed companies who have implemented us as regular events. That's the secret sauce behind it. Yeah. And most companies won't even ever touch it, but because it's built into the nature of the cruise, it's embraced. And because it's embraced, it changes everything.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that. And for anybody that's listening to this and going, man, Kev, yeah, I really like Joe. I love how he shows up. I love his energy. And I'm really curious about what he's been talking about. And I'd like to learn more about that. What's the website? Any resources we can share with them and stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, the easiest one is it's Elite Business Cruises. We do business events on cruises, Elite Business Cruises. So that's .com. So elitebusinesscruises.com. I mean, come check us out there. It's a 2-step process. You fill out a form. We have one meeting. We then go do our homework, say this is the best options based upon what it is you want, and then we set you sail. I mean, it's a 2-step process. It's incredibly powerful, and we've had clients that I'll give. Can I give 2 examples?
Yeah, cool? Absolutely.
Right. So from the sales side of example, we have a client who owns a bunch of car dealerships in Savannah, down in Georgia.
Okay.
And because it's a podcast, I'm not going to reveal the company names. But long story short, he's had the same. We did a contest where they had to be above a threshold, so he guaranteed that he'd make money by buying these tickets for the cruise. Okay. And then it was the top 40 people on top of that for his salespeople who were above the threshold could qualify.
Okay.
And the one that just happened a couple of weeks ago was the 6th one. And the guy who qualified with the first place score for the first one, 18 months ago, that score would not have qualified for this one that just happened.
Wow.
So in a span of 18 months, the top score he had now isn't even in the top 40. Wow. And there's because now we're listening more, we're paying attention more, we're getting better in our sales training meetings, and we're enveloping it. And here was the other big multiplier behind that. I go on the cruises with these guys, and the same rock stars are there on every single one. But then there's been this cohort who's been on the last 4 of them. I'm like, you guys clearly know how to sell. You're old enough to have been working whenever this started. Why weren't you on the first 2? Well, I used to work for the other company across the street, and I used to work for the other one. And I asked them, well, why'd you switch? Well, because for 4 weeks, I get to bring my wife on one of these cruises. And she no longer gets mad at me that I'm working all day Saturday or that I'm staying late to close a deal. It's no longer a fight. So, yeah, at the end of the day, my percentage cut is actually lower here. But I earn a month's worth of cruises by being here. It's not even a debate. So if you look at it, take that step back, the owner of this dealerships is spending less in total employee expenses, getting better results, and getting better people and attracting other people's superstars.
Yeah.
That's a sales example.
Yeah.
to give another example, and God knows there's an NDA on this one because this is about lawyers, guys. Lawyers in general are like one of the oldest models that has never changed with the dawn of time. Essentially, you become a partner in a law firm unless you create your own. But to become a partner in a law firm, you have to go through all the same hell that you had to go through in becoming a partner, working tons of hours, selling your soul, all that stuff you think about a lawyer, most of it's true. Depending, regardless of what kind of law it is, by the way. And law, unlike any other professional industry, and by professional, I mean an industry where you have to get more than 4 years worth of college. We're talking like surgeons, lawyers, stuff like that, advanced engineers. When someone leaves a law firm, normally in law, and this is what makes it different, they leave the industry altogether. If you're a surgeon, you just leave one hospital, you go to another hospital, you do your arm surgery there or whatever. But lawyers leave all the way and they go do something completely different. And this is a self-selecting group, by the way. These are the people who are, when they're in their 20s, go, I really want to be a lawyer. Like, I want to do this. They're self-selecting to be in, but they bail out oftentimes because they don't have the math of the lifestyle. And the person they're coming home to wants them to leave work at 5 too, so they can build their family life together. Sure, this dream of you becoming partner one day might be nice, but I don't want to go through the hell to get there. And putting all of their associates or junior partners, depending upon what the terminology is, every law firm does a little differently, and giving them the recognition of the crews, increase their year-over-year retention rate of their lawyers. And these guys were hiring the best. Like, think of the best law schools off your top of your mind. If you didn't graduate in the top 5, you weren't even getting an interview. That's what this law firm was. It was the best of the best. And they were still getting a crazy turnover rate. And I'm not saying the cruises made it 100% retention, but it dramatically improved it. All because we're acknowledging the fact that you're supposed to have a family life. You're not working. We're not the center of your life is your business. Sure, we're important. We want you to think about it. But at the end of the day, we're not the end all be all. Yeah. And acknowledging that fact, which again, by the way, full circle, this is a relationship conversation, guys. This is a relationship conversation that leads to more revenue, more of the results you want. That's what it does. And yes, I obviously am promoting my own company and my cruises, but you can do this in all kinds of different fashions. But most people never will. Yeah. And that is the difference between being a successful company and not. And just so you guys don't think I said this sentence before in passing with no passion behind it, this fact of us ignoring the people at home is why AI is taking over so hard. Because the people who are making money on the AI, who are selling the $1 billion, the 9-figure contracts on it, aren't so Siri can tell you who won the World Series. It's so when I annoy my employees so bad, this computer doesn't get annoyed. It has nothing to do with productivity. It has to do with the fact that overall, we are failing at what it means to be managers in this country and developers of successful business. Yeah. What is the relationship between your business and your employees?
Yeah. That's some powerful stuff right there. That's some powerful stuff right there. I'm sure you've got a few people thinking right now, Joe. I want to thank you for taking the time to come here today and just share. And I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. My goal for this podcast is on your side, of course, the guest. I want to give you the opportunity to honor, a person or persons that have just been really valuable, really instrumental in your life and your business. And on the other side, for our listeners who are also entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs, I want to just inspire them by using these stories that you all share to inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And we definitely delivered on that, thanks to you, Joe. And I really appreciate that. And so any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Well, first of all, I appreciate everyone staying with us for the duration of the call. I know that I took this meeting a little bit long, did this recording a little bit long, but again, there is a way of approaching relationships that is so much more powerful than learning how to bike by just pedaling fast until you don't fall over.
Yeah.
And to put a conscious thought into how I build relationships and how I go about it, it is life changing. Um, and I invite you to at least explore it. And if Father and Joe, my podcast, is a way to dip your toe into that pool, I certainly invite you to do it. But learning how to have people to want to connect with you and want to resonate with you, and then likewise you in return, how to create amazing win-wins. I mean, that's what everything I do is all about. And that would be the thing that I'd want to leave people with. Again, as the business owners out there, there's two relationships. What's the relationship between your business and your prospects and clients? And what is the relationship between your business and your employees?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Joe, once again, thank you. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet.